and values, among others. From the foregoing, therefore, it is clear that security is vital for the development and democratization of every society. Security as a concept is commonly associated with the alleviation of threats to cherished values, especially the survival of individuals, groups, or objects in the near future. Thus, security, as the name implies, involves the ability to pursue cherished political and social ambitions. Security could also take different forms. There is the human security, national security, and so on. The United Nations Development Programme defines the scope of human security to include economic security, food security, health security, environmental security, personal security, community security, and political security. Human security involves protecting the citizens from hunger, from diseases, poverty, unemployment, national disaster, etc. However, all this can only take place where there is peace and stability in the polity. Now, let's look at the local government reforms of 1976. In September 1973, the Public Service Review Commission was set up under the chairmanship of Chief Jerome Udochi. The commission was, among other things, asked to examine the organization, structure, and management of the public service and recommend whether such reforms were desirable. The commission was clearly ambivalent in respect of its recommendation on the local government service. The commission recommended, however, that the whole structure of the local government system be re-examined with a view to adopting a single-tier system. This recommendation was turned down by the government. It was the view of the commission that in order to be able to recruit and retain competent staff, the salaries and conditions of service of local government staff should not be less favorable than those of the civil servant. In accepting this recommendation, government added that the qualification for appointment to local government posts should also be at par with laid down for appointment of posts graded similar in the civil service. In general, the Commission's recommendations on local governments were less far-reaching than those on the civil service. As has been observed elsewhere, what makes the situation worse is that on the few occasions where Commission's recommendations will have made some significant changes, local differences reflect the situation. The local government reforms of 1976 was essentially motivated by the necessity to establish and nationalize government at the local level and to harness local resources for rapid development. The federal military government, therefore, decided to recognize local government as the third tier of government activity in the nation. The 1976 reforms, as Brigadier Musa Shehu Yar'Adua pointed out, were intended to stimulate democratic self-government and to encourage initiative and leadership potentials. In broad terms, the ultimate objective of the reforms were stated to center reasonable measures of autonomy over local affairs on local representatives, to encourage citizens' participation in local administration, to make local institutions responsive, to mobilize local resources, and to share power between the state and local communities. The reform was carried out by the then government in order to centralize power. It was the view of the military that effective decentralization and political authority was essential to the dynamism of the federation, that it was essential to the focusing of political energies and to providing firm national direction. Thus, national solidarity and discipline became highly cherished values, although elusive of attainment. By the early 1970s, these values had become misconstrued to imply only unquestionable obedience to government fiat without corresponding duty on the part of the government to be responsive. In the end, it was extreme centralization and personalization of power, which was the undoing of the Yakubu Gowon's government. According to Brigadier Murtala Mohammed, after the Nigerian Civil War, the affairs of the state hitherto to collective responsibility became characterized by lack of consultations, indecisions, indisciplines, and neglect. Unknown to the general public, the feeling of dissolution was also evident among members of the armed forces. Things got to a stage where the head of the administration became virtually inaccessible, even to official advisors, and when advice was tendered, it was often ignored. The government believed that effective local government system with which to provide local service will be a check on the rampant agitation for the creation of new states. Thus, the centralization of power and authority implied by the local government reforms of 1976 was also meant to achieve integrative purpose, to provide structural framework for local initiative and control over local development, and thus a satisfactory psychological framework for state and national cohesion. In carrying out these reforms, the federal government merely wished to emphasize that this responsibility should be clearly defined and that the local government should have adequate financial resources to meet their obligations, which are mainly to stimulate development at the grassroots. Nothing in this reform could be construed to mean an attempt to reducing or abolishing the traditional functions of our emirs, obas, or chiefs. On the contrary, the reforms recognize the crucial nature of our traditional authorities, and care has been taken to preserve the organic unity of our traditional institutions and societies. By and large, the main reasons for the national local government reforms of 1976 were that a representative local government system was considered essential to a national democratic system of government, that strong local government authorities with clearly defined functional responsibility in a power-sharing relationship with the state was institutional and also could safeguard against tyranny, that the reforms were necessary for greater efficiency and relevance in the provisions of local services, which will facilitate the integration of national political system. Thus, it is worth emphasizing here that the essence of the local government reforms was to create room for development at the local level and improve the living conditions of services of local government staff. By virtue of this, it has greatly reduced the number of people that will have moved to state capital for greener pasture. The local government reforms ensure that resources at the local level are adequately harnessed for rapid development, which by implication will facilitate the growth of urban centers. The emphasis here also is to develop rural areas, as that will put less pressure on cities and urban amenities. Now, let's look at local government council autonomy and security management at the grassroots, which is very key to this conference or to this paper. As observed by Boyega, local government council autonomy is intended to bring government closer to the grassroots, that government must be the business of the people. It must touch their daily lives, and it must reflect their aspirations through their direct involvement in governance at all levels. The local government council autonomy is also intended to lay the political and economic basis for grassroots-oriented development. It means governance by inclusiveness. People at the grassroots must be carried alone. They must be carried alone. They must be allowed to exercise their franchise when it matters. That the federal government has vested council with the power to vet and approve the local budget, make bylaws, and to monitor the performance of the executive arm of the local government. Anything short of this will therefore result into chaos and anarchy. Good governance, therefore, signifies quality leadership. Nonyelu refers to good leadership as the process of formulating policies and implementing them based on several factors such as respect for the rule of law and order, provisions of human dignity, popular participation in the democratic process, equity, transparency, accountability, and unhindered access to information. On this note, local government council autonomy and security management at the grassroots, therefore, is a framework by which justice, fairness, and equity are exercised. It also goes down to the ability to share, distribute, and to manage resources efficiently, to implement and enforce sound policies and regulations in the interest of the people or citizens. State governments should accept that local governments are a necessary instrument of democratic decentralization and constitutionality mandated to receive fiscal allocations from the federal government. The local government council autonomy, therefore, is all about political inclusiveness, justice, fairness, and equity. There should be a free, level playing ground for all political actors at that level. Conclusion. By and large, or by way of conclusion, therefore, and for truly enhanced local government autonomy and security management at the grassroots, government should allow each localities or council to make their own decisions on local affairs and accept responsibility